This one, view mode reading, which I prefer. All right. Welcome everyone to this edition of Lunch and Learn. Thank you for taking the time to come and assist. I know that everybody's busy. My name is Pierre Auradi. I'll be presenting to you Plantuml. Okay, this is the agenda for today. It's a half an hour, so I'll go quickly, but feel free to interrupt me if you want, and I'll answer a question as we go forward. It doesn't have to be at the end. It's an interactive Lunch and Learn. So first off, I'll introduce what is UML, then what is Plantuml, and then how do we install it. And then I'll show you a little bit of examples, and then you'll be off to doing great things with it. I'll ask you to put on mute if you are not asking questions, just so that I can concentrate talking. So what is UML? UML is a modeling language. It's initiated in the 1990s and probably before, with people just doing diagrams by hand, that represent the computer system. So right now we are at version 2.5 of UML. So the language has evolved. It represents really ideas and concepts that could be used to be provided to the development teams, to the or to any teams that will be doing the actual work, and this will allow the common understanding of what is required versus what needs to be provided or implemented. And this could be in IT, could be also in other areas other than technology. So I put in here some. I'll be sharing the slideshow later after the meeting. I'll send it to everybody. But essentially, I put in here a little bit of some of the UMLs, what it means, the specs, some samples, support by Microsoft. Lucidchart is another tool that allows you to do diagrams UML online. Very nice tool. And also, we obviously have Visio, which is the tool that a lot of people use to create those diagrams. Plantuml is one tool that provides support for UML. So that's the topic for today. So here are some examples for UML. So we have actors and states and sequence diagrams and transitions and flow diagrams and class diagrams, etc. So again, the purpose is not to show all of what UML can represent, but just to give you a little hints, and then how can we do some of those diagrams using Plantuml. Okay. So what is Plantuml? Okay, so Plantuml is an open source diagramming tool that allows people to create diagrams using plain text language, and therefore for me it fits nicely with my mentality of a programmer, where I can describe what is my diagram and the tool will be able to go and generate the diagram out of that. So if I type in Pierre full stack developers hello, this will automatically generate a sequence diagram with those lifelines with the messages going back and forth. Okay, so diagram as a code. This is a little more complex model where we have the actors, you have system boundaries, you have legend, you have titles, you have a caption at the bottom, you have external and internal system, arrows, and database diagrams. So all of this is just to showcase the power of Plantuml. Okay. If I'm going too fast, please interrupt me. I know we have only half an hour, so I want to get to the juicy parts. So here are other examples. So this one we just showed. You can have very complex flow diagrams, sequence diagrams with lots of different legends and different icons that are available out of the box. Also, theming is something that is very easy to do with Plantuml. Okay, so this is a list of features. Diagram as a code for me is a big one. Okay, relatively natural, simple syntax, easy to read, harder to write. However, the reason why I say harder to write is because I can never remember it. I keep the documentation open every time I want to create a document, and I will just say, okay, well, how do I add a note? Okay, search the page, note, and I'll see the syntax, just copy it, put it in. Obviously, if you use this on a daily basis, it will become a lot easier to remember. For me, I use it when I need it. My role these days is not doing a lot of architecture, so I tend to do less diagrams than I would like to. So I tend to forget a lot of times the syntax, so I'll just have to go and get it. But it's not complicated in terms of syntax. Rich built-in features such as functions, spirits, styling, themes, and there's a lot of people that actually do these things. So you can always find examples and people who will answer your questions. Okay. Agenda. So we presented with Plantuml. Now we're going to present the installation. Okay. Installation demo. So for this, I'll minimize this one. I'll bring back. There's a couple. Actually, I think I have another slide after. No. So I'll minimize this, and I'll show you what I'd like to do in terms of installation. The easiest way for me to install Plantuml is literally by going into Docker and using a Docker image to install it locally. Okay, so if I do code Docker compose. Here's my Docker compose, which is very, very simple. And actually, I don't even need a Docker compose. It could have been a simple Docker run with this image and this port forwarding and with a restart. I like to keep this application up and running in my system all the time. So with this server up and running or my virtual machine always on, I have access to Plantuml at all time. It doesn't take too much memory, and it doesn't bring down the process much, the CPU usage. So if I do Docker, yes, I have my Plantuml running on port 8888. So if I look at here, network settings, I go to my port forwarding, and I see that I mapped my 888 to the external. So I can access it from my Windows machine because I don't like to work in my Linux machine for doing diagrams. I like to do my documents inside Windows. Okay, so this is the basic part. So if I go and open up a website here and I say localhost 8888, I'll see that I actually have a whole Plantuml server that is available. Okay, just FYI, we also have Plantuml, the website itself. And if you look at here, you have online server. Actually, Plantuml community provide this server out of the box hosted, so anybody can actually do their diagrams using this one. However, for security purposes, and so that I don't get audited and and marked as what the hell you're doing, sharing our internal diagrams with the community, like, on an external server, I prefer to run obviously my own local instance, which allows me to do everything that I can do outside, but in a secure manner. But if you're doing something quick and you just want to do something without any installation or anything like that, or if your diagrams are more for personal use, or I don't know, you're comfortable with the security aspect of sharing your diagrams online, then you can use this server. And actually, it's a server that's used quite a lot by a lot of people. So but it is very fast. So and it's there. Okay, so this is one here. So once you have the server up and running, the next step is to come in here and install Plantuml extension. And this one is really like any user of VS Code knows that installing an extension is as easy as clicking on install button. So once you've installed it, this one is the one that I have. 652,000 for me is good. So once you've installed it, it really takes on everything that has to do with the integration with Plantuml. So if I go into settings, and so here I have the format that I'd like to export my diagrams in. I usually put in PNG. I find I like it. Other people who like to do maybe exporting Plantuml diagrams and import them into Visio, they can do SVG. This will allow them to be able to import it as as vector graphic and actually continue editing those graphics those diagrams inside Visio if they want to. Okay, I usually keep everything else the same. So the output directory where it's going to export the files is the out folder. Diagrams into the folder with the same name as the host. So if you have Plantuml files can contain multiple diagrams. So if you have multiple diagrams in one file, when you export them, they'll be grouped under a folder with the name of the file. So this allows you to have a little bit of structure. The extensions, nothing there. So if you want to, there's another mode that I don't like to use, which is local Java mode, which is literally a jar file that actually it comes with the extension. It's downloaded by default with the extension, as you see here. But it does require that you have Java running installed on your Windows machine. Okay, and what it will do, it will just execute Java -jar, and then we'll pass it the diagram name, and it will generate the diagram. I've used it in the beginning, before I had my virtual machine up and running all the time. It works, however, it is slow because every time you want to generate a diagram, it has to launch the Java virtual machine, and then it will launch the Plantuml converter, and it will generate the diagram. So for me, this one is the easiest fallback, but it does require Java, but it is slower. Okay. So with that done, here is the point that is most important to configure. You can have, if you're trying to use a server, you can have local or Plantuml. Okay. So if I have local, that will use the Java version. If I use the Plantuml, then I'll have to give it the URL. And in this case here, I can either use the public version, or I can make it to point to the one that I've just launched. Okay. And again, if you're okay to share data with it, and again, for CGI or any environment that is security conscious, this it's not okay to share diagrams with an external server. Okay, everything else is relatively straightforward in terms of. All right, let's take an example here. Let's start doing some. Any question about the installation, by the way? No. All right. So let's start with creating sample.puml. So this is a file. Okay. So with the extension installed, I do have access to all the keywords that are defined in Plantuml. So let's start by creating a simple title, first diagram. Let's do, whoops. Okay, somebody doesn't like my presentation. So let's try and do maybe an activity diagram. Okay, so start and do end. And I can do preview current diagram, which is the easiest mode to work with. So boom, right away, very fast, almost instantaneous. You get the preview here. If I want to generate the diagram into a file, I can do export current diagram or export file diagrams. If I have more than one diagram, I can export them all. It usually uses a title, so I'll do the first one since I only have one. And here's the files. So here's the preview, but it's the PNG that I can take and use anywhere else in my code or in my diagrams. Okay. So if I go back here, let's do something a little more interesting. Let's say present Plantuml. Okay, and I can see right away it's almost instantaneous refresh. I didn't click anything; it refreshes by itself. Okay, so that's the first state. So let's say showing samples. Okay, and then it refreshes. If enjoying presentation, then yes, and I can put another state here with an underscore, so I can do clap, please, and then I can do else no, and then I can say something, I don't know, boo, and then this is end if, and then I have my diagram, and then let's keep going. I have a diagram now that I can actually, whoops, semicolon. So I have my whole diagram created in less than a few minutes. If I was to do this in Visio, probably will take me twice or 3 times longer. I can add notes. So let's say I want to add a note to the right of this one. So I can do right. This is a note to the right. Oops. right of right. Okay, so I can also do note left. This is a note to the left. Okay, so you can see there that it's showing up. One thing that I like is to show to use themes. Okay, so if I do plant UML themes gallery, usually that's the keyword that I usually search, and you'll see the first one here is called PML themes. It's a very nice site. So I can go to gallery. Let's say I like no, let's do it whatever, which one, blue gray. Okay, so let's say I want to do blue gray. So there's two ways of doing it. Since I don't want to host the blue gray file locally, all I have to do is just go and copy this. Okay, so I copied it. Then I come in here and I put it right there in the beginning, and boom, I get beautiful colors. Very easy to add specific themes to my template, because we have to admit that the default theme for Plantuml is actually very boring. The colors, the yellow and red, are not that cute. For people who actually like also C4 modeling, you can also do a Plant UML C4 theme. Okay. So there's a couple of them. This one is the one that I'm using here. I think it's this one. The one that I prefer. It's a skin, so allows me to write all of these things very easily, and they have examples and getting started. So you just have to include the theme on top, and then you put person container, and it has aliases. So this one is more of a function function system skin rather than just colors. If you just want to use a color, I think I have a here. If you just want to use the colors, so this one is more of a theme. This one is a little different than the other one. This one gives you Plant UML skin, which is just theme. So what you need to do is you need to tag your built-in Plant UML object, like an actor, and put in internal. When you put internal, it will generate those colors. Okay, and the same thing for a component. So if you have a system with the less than system less, and then so you can do it, it will be blue. So that's a C4 skin. That's the one I like. I started off initially using the functions, but I found it to be a little bit more complicated to use. I like the more flexibility with just the coloring instead of anything else. Okay, so let's keep going with some more examples. Oops. So this is one example. So another example that we can do, and I have a few of them that I've prepared in advance so that we can go quickly. This is more of class diagrams, and I use this scheme of that looks like handwriting. So, you know, nothing fancy about it. Again, very easy to read. So we define class, almost a syntax, standard syntax of object-oriented programming. We have different classes, and here we create the relationship between them. So this shows an example where you define your entities above, and then you define the relationship between them afterward. You don't have to put everything into at the same place. So if I have a dwelling that is being used by a lot of classes, this is the easiest way to do it. Okay. If you do make a mistake by typing something that doesn't exist, it actually creates it automatically. So this apartment, where's the apartment, becomes apartment X, whereas the apartment that I had before stays as the one that is not linked to anywhere. If I take something that is like an opening, let's say dwelling here. Let's say I make a mistake with the dwelling and I do here an X. Okay, boom. You see that this one goes to dwelling X, even though I have a dwelling that already exists there. So the names are very important. So, but it is auto, you know, you'll see it right away that, you know, if you make a mistake, the diagram will show that it's not perfect what you're trying to do, you know, and you'll be able to correct it very easy. If I go with something even more complicated, so here's another one where we have a package and component diagram. So this one has packages with components. This introduces the concept of as, which is a very powerful thing, because usually the Plantuml uses the title as an identifier, unless you use the keyword as, in which case it gives it a shorter alias name, and it allows me to create shorter relationships. So instead of having to type graphic user interface here, I can just type in GUI, and it will know that I'm referencing this component as the GUI. And the same thing for the internet, same thing for data access. So instead of typing data access, I would just type in DA, and that will be enough for it to make the relationship. And here I've used also another theme just to showcase the different colors that we can have. Let's keep going since we're running out of time. One thing I really like is the Gantt chart. So Plantuml allows you to create Gantt charts with beginning and conditions, lengths and period of times, etc. So very cool things. A lot of people like to use mind map. So this is a mind map that uses the Markdown style. So very easy in terms of doing indentation with the stars. So creates everything for you. So I can take this and put it in my Markdown, and it will be the same levels, the same syntax. But here in this case, Plantuml is using it to create a diagram of a mind map diagram. If I take the same diagram and I use more built-in syntax of Plantuml, I can actually get with colors and left and right, so I can orient things. I'm not going too much into the syntax because, again, all of this syntax is always showcased in the documentation, so it's very easy to go in there and say, oh, okay, if I want to make it point to the left or right, what am I supposed to write? So you'll see here left, right, left side. So boom, it will point from this point on, it will make everything on this side rather than that side, and so forth. And this one shows you also how you can customize your themes and your styles. Actually, when I import any style or theme, it literally is just doing styles like this with the colors and the arrows and the lines that are predefined, and they're usually hosted on GitHub so that people can just do a URL include, and that's all they have to do. If you want to do AWS, so all you have to do is start using the built-in AWS Spirits. And this is a keyword that allows you to actually generate a contact sheet that has all of the spirits that you have. And using that, you can actually use this and create some really sophisticated diagrams. This is not my diagram. I've copied this from the internet. So this one has all the AWS diagram icons such as buckets, API gateway, lambdas, and tables, and DynamoDB, etc. So very, very cool things. There is a website that I like to show people, which is this one here. Actually, you know what? One last thing before. You see here, I generated, let's say I generate this diagram, export diagram. And this is a very cool feature. So I've generated this, and this one is called sample PHP. So let's say I open up Word, okay? And I create a new diagram, and I say insert here, and I say insert photo. Where is it? Insert picture. So when you insert a picture, and I go back to this guy, and I say copy path, and I go back to my Word document. One thing that you can do is instead of doing insert, you can actually do insert and link, okay? And the reason why I say insert link is very useful is because if I go back to my diagram, and let's say I close this, I come in here, and let's say I want to add a title on top, which I forgot to put in. So I say here, title, Pierre was here, okay? So there I see the title showing up. If I do export my diagram, okay, and I go back to my Word document, and I do F9, which is refresh, which is because it's a presentation. Did it work? Yeah, it did. Usually when you do F9 with an insert and link, it will actually automatically update. And I think I need to save the document in order for it to save.
Yeah, it's not the same file name. I think it generated Pierre was here.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Thank you. So, all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. Good point. Thank you, Olivier. So if I remove this, and let's say I remove, I don't know, something. Get something, and then I do export. Thank you. So now it generated. So sample is smaller. I go back here and I do F9. There, I have my diagram up to date automatically. Okay, it has to be maybe resized, but I can do reset here, and boom, I have the diagram so updated. So if I have 25 different diagrams and I'm working in Plantuml and I make changes, all I have to do is go into my Word document and I do select all and F9, and it will update all of my diagram one shot, which is a very, very cool feature in my opinion, and I've used it quite a lot. There is a website that I want to show you here because again, I don't remember every syntax. So what I do is a lot of times I would have either documentation website here. So let's say I want to see how the use case syntax is available for me. So here it tells me everything, the dashes, period, equal, and it's quite extensive in terms of diagram with a table of content always on the side. If I want to do classes, so everything is there. Again, it's always about finding an example and just copy pasting the example. But there's a website here called planttext.com, and I think it's the same people who built Plantuml website. But what they've done here is they put quite a lot of examples of various types of examples of diagrams. So let's say you have a repeat activity. Okay, so this shows me how I can do a repeat. So I can do repeat while. So with this, I can copy in the syntax and use it in my diagrams. And the same thing for other, relationships. So I'll have this. This is the example that I've used. Properties. So this one shows me that I can do a diagram, a class with a lot of properties and methods and stuff like that, and so forth, so forth, so forth. Okay. The Plantuml is great, but sometimes the way that it orients the lines is not perfect. There's a way to tell it to create the lines which are either straight lines or like with square corners, or more softer and gentler roundings. But again, at the end of the day, it tries to do the best it can with the diagram that you give. Sometimes you can tell it forcefully to say down versus left or right to orient the lines, but otherwise it generates things for you. And again, for somebody who's visually impaired like myself, I tend to accept the diagram and say, perfect, they convey the message that I want. The visual effect is not important for me. Therefore, it saves me a lot of effort to having to open up my Visio and create the diagram and spend hours and hours on visuals rather than just get it done, get it out, and move on to the next step in my life. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to do. So we have a few minutes left. Any questions, any comments from anybody?
I'm just wondering if it's possible to generate Plantuml from a code base.
Very good question. I have not done it. Reverse engineering for me is always tricky question because it depends on the code base that you have. I've used tools that are professional to reverse engineer Java code base jars, and it's almost not usable at the end because it's so big and it's so convoluted that it's like, what am I looking? You can try. If you succeed, then share the formula with the rest if you can, Jeffrey. If anybody can do it, you can. But
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's text, so
generate anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct in assuming that you can embed a Plantuml into another one?
Yes, you can, which is what there's the include. However, there is a small restriction doing that. The only way that I could get it to work is by using the Java method of generating the files, because if it's local, then what you need to do is you need to be able to reference that file. Their include syntax is not very well. I find it almost easier to just copy paste the diagram and put them in than to do it that way. Or if you have a Bitbucket or a repo that you can reference with a direct URL, then that works. But your local instance needs to have access to that URL. Local include is feasible. I've done it, but it requires the Java, which I don't like, and it's slow. Whereas this one is so fast that any changes you make, all you have to do is just it refreshes in like no time.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Well, please try it out. It's very, very easy to install, very easy to get started. And I guarantee once you've used it a few times, you always think, okay, well, can I do it with Plantuml so I can just create a quick diagram, okay, instead of having to open up Visio and just do it there. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you
Very much, Pierre.
Thank you,
very
Pierre.
much, Pierre.
Thank you, Pierre.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Merci.
Bye.